Welcome to the IDnext lunch break. My name is Jacoba Cedars. I've been part of the advisory board of IDnext, the platform, since more than 10 years. And well, we are all about sharing knowledge, and it takes time, and we're aware of that. So that's why we have this lunch break, in order to make your life easy to share it during your lunch. The only thing you need to bring is your own lunch. And today we have two very interesting topics, or guests, I have to say. We have three guests. We have Robert van Haersma, Buma, and Lonneke Kerr Verhagen. Both are working for Rabobank. They will further introduce themselves. And we have Thomas Meijer, who is an account manager of Van der Valk, the well-known restaurant and hotel chain. And they're going to present about a use case for easy use of the login to a hotel. They're explaining it themselves. But before we start, I would like to make notice that everything will be recorded. So you will be able later on to view if you have missed anything. Also, if you want to pose a question, please switch on your camera so we can all see you speaking, and that will, of course, then also be part of the recorded meeting. Now, the speakers will introduce themselves, so I'm handing over the screen and the microphone to Rabobank and Van der Valk. Go ahead.
Right, I shall start. First of all, thank you for inviting me to speak at the IDnext. Let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Thomas Meijer, working at Valk Digital. Valk Digital is the facilitating company for the Valk exclusive hotels and restaurants, and I'm working there for almost 5 years now. We at Valk Digital are responsible for the development of various techniques and major marketing campaigns. For example, we developed our own Valk exclusive app, where our guests can book and see all their stuff about the reservations. We have our own internal developers for that. Also, we made our own reservation system for the restaurants, made a housekeeping and technical service app, so that our staff can offer even more service to our guests and improve the internal communication. Some time ago, we started to look after if we can further optimize the guest journey, so that we can unburden our guests and the receptionists. Ultimately, it resulted that we were working together with Rabobank to improve our check-in through iDIN verification. Later on that, first, Robert, for the introduction.
Sure. Yeah, so Robert van Haersma Buma. My background is in fintech and payments, having worked for international payment service providers and credit card acquirers before joining Rabobank in June 2020. My role is team lead business development, B2B services. And within our team, we focus on 3 strategic product lines within the bank, being payments, the acceptance of PIN, credit cards, iDEAL and such. Open banking, the development of open APIs to securely share payment data with third parties, with customer consent, of course, and identity services, which is today's topic. And we'd like to start with a question in that sense. Everyone signed up for this webinar, and well, of course, we're curious to already get a bit of an idea of what the reasons are that you joined. So, is there anyone who has prepared a question that you would like to see addressed during this webinar?
Hopefully.
Anyone? Well, I have a question. It's Jacoba speaking. Recently, in October, on an identity congress, I heard colleagues of yours from the Rabobank, Larissa Wezenberg and Joris Lange, talk about DataKeeper as an app from Rabobank, something with identity or self-sovereign identity, with a similar type of use case, which they presented, that it would be easy to identify yourself with, for instance, travel, hotel, and so on. So I'm really curious, what is the link between yourself and DataKeeper, as they called it? Are you working together? Are you planning to work together? And how do I need to link the two together? Or maybe they're not at all together or working together.
Sure. Then let's start by answering that question because that won't be part of the presentation as such. But so DataKeeper is both a consumer app as well as call it a way of acceptance by merchants. Now the difference is if you want to accept one of the products from Rabo Identity Services, the consumer doesn't need to have an app. The only thing the consumer needs to have is a bank account or an ID, or we'll get into the detail of that later. Now with DataKeeper, the consumer needs to have the app, and in the app he has his identifications and things alike stored in the app. Now we do work together with DataKeeper because, so say you need to log in through iDIN in DataKeeper, which you need to do in the first instance, that can be done through us. Okay, so if I'm summarizing correctly, you are only delivering identity services as such based on iDIN, and that iDIN, the identity, can be used to enroll in the DataKeeper app. Yep. And then the DataKeeper app is an identity wallet or a data wallet or credential wallet as such, that is then a product that is enrolled with help of your identity services. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay. I think I understand now. Yeah. Great, and we'll get to a bit more of our products later, because you mentioned iDIN, but it can also be the ID scan with accompanying selfie check. But we'll get to that later during the presentation. Okay, that's part of your presentation. Yes. All right, then we'll start. Before we start, we will have room for questions for sure at the end, but also in between. Every now and then, Thomas and I will we'll open the floor for questions. But during our talks, yeah, we need to concentrate on that. So just a form of housekeeping. So what will we be discussing today? A seamless check-in process, well, check-in and check-out. We'll start with Thomas explaining the motivation from Van der Valk. How did they get to the point of offering the clients a self check-in and out service. Then I will elaborate further on Rabo Identity Services, where it originates from and what it consists of. Thomas will then take over again on how how Van der Valk uses Rabo Identity Services, how it works, and he will also share some usage data, and we'll end with a conclusion and, of course, room for questions. So, Thomas, if I can give the floor to you again for the motivation.
No problem there. We started briefly in 2017 to optimize our guest journey. As I briefly indicated during my intro, we have been working for some time to improve our check-in procedure at our hotels. My general manager, Gerrit Schoonmaker, came up with the idea to improve the check-in procedure so that our guests, so when our guests will be checking, the reception had more information, and so they could provide the guests with better service. To get where we are now, we went through different phases, and it all started in 2017 with the Easy Check-in module. What is the Easy Check-in module? It is a one-time verification for your email, mobile phone, and the proof of identity. At that point, the identity was checked by the receptionist. There were some perks for the guests if they had verification for that. They had a fast check-in. They didn't need to give the ID at other Van der Valk hotels. They had the possibility to set preferences in their own Valk account, such as a room with a balcony or a room room at the parking lot side or that kind of stuff. They also had the possibility to chat directly with the hotel, with reception. So there was even more hospitality, and there was a possibility of use of the mobile key, what you can see in one of the pictures here on screen. After the easy check-in module, we further optimized our check-in. After that, we had the fast check-in and fast check-out, where there was a prepayment in the Valk account, and there was also a digital sign, police letter and a house rules. After that, we had the online check-in module that was started in 2019. Our guests had the possibility to check in at the reception through an iPad. So all the information was sent from the iPad to our PMS systems. Also, they could authorize their credit card online in their Valk account, so they could use use the restaurant and don't have to pay at that point. After that, we came at the point that we developed our self check-in and self check-out module, and that we did together with the Rabobank and the iDIN verification. Later on, I will tell you more about it, and we have a little movie to explain the check-in module. Robert?
Yes. So first, I will go through Rabo Identity Services again, the origin and what it entails. So Rabo Identity Services originates from the idea that the personal information that financial institutions in the Netherlands are obliged to have from customers can be used by those same customers for convenience. So basically to make a virtue out of necessity. This resulted in the product iDIN, a way to verify or identify yourself by logging into your bank. Now, in collaboration with the European market leader Signicat, or market leader in identity services, which is Signicat, Rabobank offers, in addition to iDIN, a complete portfolio of identity services. All of which can be integrated via one API. It's safe, it's reliable and easy, and applicable to several business sectors such as HR, financial services, and of course hospitality, which we are discussing today. Plus, it can be used in many different ways as well, depending on what your purpose is of using them. So our identity services offering consists of 6 products. And to start with iDIN, which enables someone to identify him or herself by sharing personal data through his or her bank. And a good example of this is the age check. In the Netherlands, you need to be 18 years of age to buy alcohol, and say you want to do that online, you need to be able to prove that you are indeed 18 years of age. You can do that through an iDIN transaction, which is in terms of flow and customer experience, exactly the same as an ideal transaction. The difference is that instead of money going from one place to the other, it is data going from one place and the other. In this case, the age of the buyer or the consumer. So the consumer gives its consent to his or her consent to the bank to share with the merchant that he is 18 years of age or older. And once that is done, he or she can continue with the purchase. But this is in an online environment, right? But you can also translate it into an offline environment where you can put a QR code on, I don't know, a bar or in a supermarket. And if you doubt if someone's 18 years of age or not, someone can scan the QR code with the mobile phone and a iDIN transaction will be started. So again, it is applicable in different ways. Then besides iDIN, we have the ID scan. It's a digital ID scan with accompanying selfie check for verification. Is the person on the passport actually the one scanning and sending it, which can be used for instance, HR purposes. Authentication via one-time password by email or text message. We have the authority check for business contracts. Is the person who is signing the contract authorized to do that? We have the IBAN name check is the combination whereby the check is if the combination between a bank account number and the name of the bank account holder correct to prevent errors and fraud in case of direct debits, but also when paying invoices. And digital signing. Digitally sign your contract via signature by mouse or SMS, or again, you can use iDIN to do that. And you can follow up on those contracts if needed, because there's a complete audit trail on it. And all, again, can be integrated via one API. So this is the broad story when it comes to Rabo Identity Services. Now, Van der Valk has chosen to use iDIN specifically. Yeah, and Thomas, if I can transfer back to you, please explain how you guys do that.
Yeah.
Or how Van der Valk does that.
How does it work? Well, we all know it. You go out for a nice night and you end up in a huge queue at the reception desk. You still have to get checked out all your data at reception. So the first experience is not really great. Through the iDIN verification, our self-check-in module is the optimization for the guests, so they have a better guest journey. We have a little movie or short movie. Excuse us, there is no sound with it. It is also in Dutch. If you want the movie sent to you after the presentation, you can ask me that, and I will send the little presentation of the self-check-in to you guys. Could you put on the little explanation about the self-check-in? Yes. And the
is it working?
Not yet, but in the right bottom, maybe you can. Right.
This is odd. What I can do is I can
open it in a
link indeed.
Yeah.
I'm just going to switch screens.
Excuse us, it's just taking a second.
Thomas, I'm just going to ask you to confirm if you can now see the screen in Mozilla. All right.
Yeah. Hopefully, all the other guests can see that. Well, we see two of our guests. They were making a booking online through their Valk account at this point. And this is one of our family members explaining how does it work. Now, of course, the iDIN verification, it's all done on your phone or just on your desktop. So when you come to our hotel, you can just scan the QR code. If you've not done that up front, or you've done it at home, you just go to the reception, receive your card, and even in. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, my Siri took over. Excuse me for that. But there's also a possibility that you can use the mobile key for all the guests who have downloaded the Valk exclusive app and went through the self-check-in. They can use the mobile key to open their rooms. You can switch back to the presentation, Robert.
Yes.
But why do we use the iDIN authentication? Well, the main problem was that at our reception, we did it by hand. So the ID verification was done by hand. And mostly at the reception between 3 and 6, when the check-in is, it's kind of busy. You have a big queue. They don't fill in all the forms, so the iDIN or the ID verification was lost. So we were thinking about other solutions. And the iDIN verification, is quite simple, fast, and of course secure date by verifying your personal data for our guests, and they can do it themselves. So there is no receptionist who has done this. The guest is just in control. The reception does not have to fill in any data anymore. And if we look at our numbers, the check-in, so the total self-check-in completed, it was 17%, but the total self-check-in completed by iDIN is more or less 10% of all the self-check-ins. The other methods, the ID verification, by the reception or by we use Clippa, is more or less than was approximately 3%. So we can see that the iDIN verification is really working right now, and more guests are using the self check-in. So yeah, we can have more time for our guests, and we can give them more hospitality. There is a question, I see.
Yeah.
I cannot read it right now. Check-in international guests possible in the app. How do you bring this app under the attention to your guests in advance? So, we have a couple of ways to do that. You can book through several bookings websites, such as our own website. 80% of the bookings are coming through our own website. But we also have like booking.com, Expedia, hotels.nl. We can send information to the guests through the systems of booking.com and Expedia. Booking.com allows us to send the guest information upfront about the check-in module, and that they can use the Valk exclusive app where the self-check-in module, so they can use the self-check-in module. So that's hopefully answers your question. And how do you know the same person who did the iDIN check is also checking into the hotel? Well, that's of course that's a harsh one, but yeah, we rely on our guests to be honest, of course. The thing is, they pay upfront. All the information and all their information is been verified, such as the email, the mobile phone, and of course through iDIN, the bank account. So if anything goes wrong, we've got all the information about the guests. So hopefully, that's also answered your question. Martin?
Well, I can imagine it's the same what that banks have to do. How do you tie a natural person to a digital set of data about that person? And I think that, and another question which we see is that why do we have to be sure it's the same person as long as you get your payment? Is there any regulation behind that hotels have to do the identity verification, which could be an underlying question?
We also have the mobile key. So the mobile key, you don't go to the reception itself. You can just check in up front before you go to the hotel. You receive your room number on your phone. You come into the hotel, go to the elevator, and you go to the room and check in yourself. So it's nice to know that we that everything is so we know that the person who is going to be checked in is truly the person by the ID verification, and that's why we use.
Yeah, so the device of the mobile phone, the mobile key, and the data, that's a triangle, and that makes you know that this should more or less be the same person. I could, of course, let in someone else, but that could be done in any other identification means. But the question about the data storage, how long do you keep the data, and how can we stay in a hotel in general anonymously? Is there any regulation by government saying that you have to identify me?
Yeah, we have the GDPR regulations. I don't know them on top of my mind, but we use GDPR regulations. We have legal over here who's checking that how long we can save all the data.
Yeah.
I don't know that by right now.
But you're not entitled to host a guest that you haven't identified.
Yeah.
Right, I can see somebody with a little background in the chat answering, who says yes, I think. So there are some more remarks in the chat. It's not allowed to make ID copies in the Netherlands. And
No.
in case you're now making a digital copy in a way, or
No, we don't
fact,
make any copies of IDs.
you're not storing any data,
No,
just validation.
just
of the
validation.
data.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be one of the privacy benefits for your guests, apart from time saving and better hospitality and power to the people. It is also more privacy friendly. Any more questions, since we are now on our way? Yeah, Martin Wildeman, I can see you. You can type your message, or you can come into the meeting if you like. And
well, I'm on
camera
mobile phone, so
yeah,
a bit difficult. Right. A question about the percentages that you have. I see that you have a total check-in started with iDIN with 20%, and you have only a completion of 10%, which kind of tells me that you have a dropout of 50.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Well, a lot of our guests are coming into the hotel. They have a QR code over there. They can scan it, and they can go do the self check-in. Well, most of the times when the guests are in the hotel itself and they see the queue and it is decreasing, they still are going to the reception desk itself. It will take up like 3 to 5 minutes to do the ID verification and the self check-in, but mostly when the guests are coming into the hotel and the queue is not that long, yeah, they don't finish it. But if we look at numbers before that, it was yeah, even less. It was more or less that 10% went to the self check-in. So when we were using the iDIN, it really went up. Oh, the iDIN, sorry about that.
Yeah, so if I'm correct, the dropout of half of the people who start with the iDIN login, from the 20 starters, 10% is only complete, or half of them is only completing. You say that they obviously, when the queues have gone, they prefer to have human interaction instead of some app.
Yeah,
that's your, if I summarize the answer.
We
so
also
it's not
use
due to technical problems.
Yeah, we also use Clippa, not the same as like Rabobank has, and therefore 70% finish the verification. So in comparison to the ID verification, yeah, well, that's 30% difference. 35.
Just for,
yeah.
Sorry,
I can
Thomas,
see now in the
add something
app.
here. Sorry, I go. I'm just gonna, because Clippa is mentioned. Clippa is a way of a digital ID scan for the people who don't know.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I see that now in the chat. John Rijmakers has given us the information that identification is obliged by the Dutch law called nachtregister. So I wasn't knowing that. So that's thank you for noting this. And then Oscar van Deventer is asking whether I could check in pseudonymously. So I would use a name where only the police could make the final identification. That's the question. Technically, this is possible, but is it legally possible as well? Is anyone of you deeper into this nachtregister or identification legislation for hotels?
Well, oh, somebody else.
It's not your core business, I suppose. But,
no, not my core business, of course.
No.
But well, the nachtregister also, if there is any fire of that kind of stuff, you have to register all your guests. So if something goes wrong, and you have to leave the hotel, we can give that to the police force or to the firemen.
So that's for the security reasons. So you don't have any missing people that you couldn't trace.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so this anyone, I think we should read the law by ourselves then and find out all the details if we want to know more. Any more questions? Not at the moment. Well, you may continue with your presentation if you like.
Sure, Thomas. I'm going to. I think you're going to start with the conclusion, after which I will end.
Yeah, we already thought a little bit of it, but after development of our check-in modules, there was often a problem that the ID was not verified by the reception, just like I told you already. This resulted in unnecessary work after, which meant that the guest could not make optimal use of the self-check-in module. Since we have been working with the iDIN verification, we have seen a significant increase in verified accounts and guests who use the self-check-in module. Yeah, well, this gives our receptionists more time for the guests at reception. They can provide them with more service and hospitality, and due to automate all this kind of tasks for them. That is kind of our conclusion from Van der Valk.
Yeah, so if I summarize, you're really happy, you're reducing the waiting times, you're improving the customer satisfaction, you give the power to the users.
Yeah.
But I had some more questions about the 10% of your verifications is done by iDIN, then you say 3% by Kleppa, which is obviously another maybe vendor, or is that also part of that app? Is that and then the rest is physical personal check-in?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to get the percentages adding up. Any more questions from the audience? I can see there are new messages. Is a check-in with iDIN used in all the Van der Valk hotels?
Well, I work for Valk Exclusive Hotels. It's a more exclusive brand, and we have 41 hotels, 40 hotels in the Netherlands and 1 in Germany. So not all Van der Valk hotels are working with iDIN verification. I don't know what the other group is working with, but so most of the hotels in the Netherlands are working with the iDIN verification.
Yeah.
You can all the hotels, Valk Exclusive.nl.
Okay. Now this, I heard you say there's one user using the in Germany. If we look at, exactly, Anita Einbrecht is also setting in the chat, how does Van der Valk Identification identify international customers? Do you have any strategic plan to start working with, for instance, EIDs, national EIDs of other countries or European member states? As we know, the eIDAS regulation, a lot of federated identities. I have heard that you work together with Signicat, who also, maybe not you, but Rabobank is working together with Signicat, which is also one big ecosystem of various identities. What are your plans with that? Do we have any strategic?
International hotels, not yet. We only have 1 hotel now in Düsseldorf. We want to expand our hotels in Germany. We don't have any plans for now. I know they are looking for some ground to build some new hotels, but for now we only have 1 hotel in Düsseldorf. So we're now making it for the.
Yeah, so that's hotels in a foreign country, but now if we reverse that, international people from other countries coming to your Dutch hotels, how is the identification strategy?
At this point, we're only doing the self-check-in module for our Dutch customers. It's approximately 80 to 9% of the customers or the guests are from the Netherlands. And for the other, it's Belgium, Germany, and especially during the Corona, we don't have a lot of foreign guests, especially from countries.
I imagine.
That's kind of harsh, but for now we don't have any plans to expand this module yet. But in technology, everything goes rather fast, so maybe that will come up later this year or in the beginning of 2022.
Yeah, so these plans are not yet there to answer the question, but it could be possible. And Robert from Rabobank, do you have any vision on identification for internationals? Because you use the iDIN, which is of course the bank ID in the Netherlands, but ecosystems in identity could federate with a growing number of more mature EIDs cross-border. Do you have any strategy?
Yeah, so our strategy is for the EID, we focus solely on the Netherlands for now. There's not any plans to add international IDs. So for international guests, so say Van Valk would also like to use Rabo Identity Services for their international guests, we would either advise them to take the passport scan or the ID scan with the accompanying selfie check for international guests, or we would work together with Signicat to say, okay, we need to extend the partnership between Van der Valk and Rabobank and Signicat, because there will be overlap if you go international, and Signicat will then provide the international service. So the international acceptance of the EIDs will then be done by Signicat.
Okay, so you have that you're using the Signicat ecosystem, as I would think, and selfie check, that's a different company. So you're outsourcing in a way, or it's your partner to do the knowing your customer intake for iDIN. Is that correct, or how do I see that? Because the iDIN is a bank ID, so people have already enrolled in a bank and they don't need to have already a Dutch bank account. And then knowing your customer, the identification of new people who want a new iDIN, that's a separate department. That's not part of your identity service. Is that correct? Or do you also enroll?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay, so if I'm the user, I'm a person in the Netherlands, and I want my iDIN identity with you. I first need to have a bank account with Rabobank. Is that enrollment to become a customer and being checked? Is that also part of the identity service you do yourself, or is that not part of the Rabo Identity Services?
At the moment, some of our business units do use Rabo Identity Services and some don't. However, if someone does not have a bank account in the Netherlands, then iDIN, of course, is already out of scope to become
so I need to come in with some Dutch bank account, which does not need to be a Rabobank bank account, but any one of the other parties taking part in iDIN, the Dutch bank account identity ecosystem. Once I have that, then I can enroll with the identity service for Rabobank, even if I have a different bank account. And then I could do all the identity service that you are offering.
Yes, so there's a difference here. If you have a bank account, you automatically are part of the iDIN scheme, right? If you're a consumer, you can use a merchant asks you to complete a iDIN transaction, you can do that if you have your bank account or bank card at hand. Now, if you are a merchant where you're saying, okay, I want to accept Rabo Identity Services, there's two situations. It can be a Rabobank client, but you don't need to be a Rabobank client to use Rabo Identity Services. So say if the situation was that Van der Valk is not a Rabobank client, they could still still use our Rabo Identity Services.
Yeah, there's some more questions. To stay in the same topic, how does the self-check-in, what if I'm a business consumer? So I have a business bank account from my company. Can I use that also for iDIN and to identify myself?
No, it's
the
EID. So you can, but you don't. So you can identify yourself with a different bank account number than the bank account used to pay for the hotel.
Yeah, any bank account that has iDIN, that is taking part in iDIN. That's a cooperation from the banks. Okay.
Correct.
And then there's another question. It's more about Van der Valk. What do guests say about this way of doing their check-ins? Have they been asked for their opinion? I can imagine they find it easy, but maybe they miss a personal touch, says Selina Brons. And do you have any insights in that?
Yeah, of course, we have a survey we send to our guests, but they still have the possibility to just stand into the queue and get to the reception. It's more or less the same as at the supermarkets. When you like 5 years ago, nobody was using the self-scanner for all their products, and I think it's just a matter of time that our guests are going to use the self-check-in, especially for the corporate guests who are using the Van der Valk hotels for maybe 3-4 days a week. For them it's much faster, and of course the personal touch and everything, the reception itself has more time on hand to provide it to our guests, because they don't have to fill in all the information in the PMS system. Then we see the question about Oscar, about the QR check for the Corona.
Corona, can it be integrated?
Yeah, at this point, no, we don't have, because the Corona check app is something, and that we have to check it is from the last 2-3 months. We don't develop that fast. We only have 2 developers in-house at this point. So no, we don't have that integrated, and hopefully in a couple of months we don't have to use that anymore. But I don't know what the government is gonna say or gonna do.
So the answer is no.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think I have some more questions to Rabobank or for the identity services as such. What are the new partners that you want to attract? Because I hear you say Signicat and then selfie check, and you also do digital signing. There's probably also a partner helping you with that. And are you planning to extend the services and the partners to be even more versatile and interoperable with other services?
No, so the complete set is in partnership with Signicat. So even the selfie check is through Signicat. And in that way, as far as I'm aware, we don't currently have any plans to partner with anyone else, and we feel that with the market leader in Europe, as well as one that has a very complete set of identity services, we have the right partner.
Okay. Then there's a question about the data sharing, and I think this is a very generic question with many users of iDIN or of people who don't use iDIN for that reason. If I do my identification with iDIN or log in with iDIN, what data is shared with the relying party, the exacting party? In this case, it's Van der Valk. What data is shared, and do I give consent, and how is that privacy-wise?
So, shall I start, Thomas?
Yeah, no problem there. I don't know.
No, so when an iDIN transaction starts, you at some point you log into your bank data, and within the transaction you get the question, basically the question for consent. Dear customer, by your bank, at that moment you're logged into your bank. Dear customer, can we share this information with Van der Valk Hotels? In this case, I don't know exactly which information we chose, Thomas, but
name, surname, and your birth date.
Yeah. So and then you give consent. You say yes, bank. It doesn't matter if you're a Rabobank customer or ABN or any other bank. Yes, you can share this with Van der Valk, and at that point, it's done. And then for how Van der Valk stores that data is all within the rules and regulations of GDPR, etc.
Yeah, and that means that also if we look at GDPR, the data regulation, we can consider that Van der Valk is deleting the data if I want, as a user, I want to exercise the right to be forgotten. Then I tell to Rabobank, please, no sharing any longer, and then Van der Valk needs to retire, to withdraw this data and delete it from the systems, and I get notification that it's been done.
That's true.
Yeah, so I can be sure it's done. It's gone from the Valk, and it's only with Rabobank.
Yes.
I think that's very important for users. And then some technical question: how does it work? Did you use the API for the Payment Services Directive 2? For those who don't know, Payment Services Directive 2 is a law regulating the financial services, stating that anyone can come through or payment services can come through the back of the bank to use the back door and do some data sharing or initiate payments. Is that part of your API? I don't think so, because maybe Valk is not a payment service party. But do you use that option for other partners in your identity services?
No, so PSD2 is basically a rule set, indeed, from the regulatory body in Europe, right? It's not a specific API. It only obliges banks to develop APIs to share that data, indeed, with consent. Now, this is not part of that. iDIN, for that matter, and our other identity services were already there before PSD2 was there.
Just to make that clear, because it's sometimes a bit difficult to understand what is what, but iDIN is only an identification service from the banks, and it's not the same as the API allowing Payment Service Directive 2 data sharing. That's a separate topic.
Yes.
Yeah. Any more questions from the audience? The chat is silent. Michel Kloeg, go ahead. Share your camera and pose your question, please.
Ja, doe ik even in het Nederlands, als je dat goed vindt.
All right, I will translate you.
Ja, nou, ik denk dat er alleen maar Nederlanders luisteren, maar dat is een ander geval.
Oké.
Nou, super dat Thomas van de Valk en Rabo deze informatie delen. Hè, dus dank je wel daarvoor. Hartstikke interessant. Ik denk ook dat het onderwerpen zijn die in komende jaren natuurlijk ingebed raken in wat we allemaal al digitaal doen. Voor Thomas heb ik even de vraag nog. Wij hebben zeg maar hotels en restaurants in de provincie Zeeland. Dat is vooral toeristisch.
Ja.
Ik ben natuurlijk benieuwd hoe Van der Valk daarover zou denken. Want zoals Van der Valk, maar wij dat ook proberen. Je bent het natuurlijk voor je gast. Ja. En dat met een hoofdletter. Gastvrijheid is nummer 1. En dat is ook aandacht en helpen en leeftijdsproblemen. Maar kijk, als het gaat zoals je nu met elkaar denkt. Dus dat op termijn veel meer gasten dat gaat doen. En dus dat ook de front office medewerker of medewerkster meer tijd heeft voor de gast. Krijg je ook de situatie dat die gast er eigenlijk niet meer is. En die front office medewerker er dan niet meer hoeft te zijn. Hoe zie je nou dat zeg maar voor die toeristische sector? En is die veronderstelling van mij juist? Of kan je die zo van tafel vegen?
Nou, die kan op dit moment nog niet.
English. Do you understand English? I suppose.
Sorry, I was already going.
I repeat the question. So Michel Kloeg is asking if this is all going to develop and we are going to be more digital and more self-serviced, the people interaction will be less prominent at the front office. And what do you think about this development? How do you see this? Because it will be very impersonal then.
It also depends on the location of the hotel. You said you were working in Zeeland. We have 2 hotels in Zeeland, Middelburg and Goes. There are different hotels. There are more leisure-based hotels. So you have more guests who want the attention of the reception. At this point, we see that the self-check-in module is not used that often in that kind of hotels. We see that when there are more corporate hotels, so say in Amsterdam, Utrecht, and that kind of hotels, they use the self-check-in even more. But also, I think in a couple of years, the receptionists are going to be more like guest relationship managers, or not even more. They don't going to do the check-in even more. They just welcome the guest into the hotel. They help them with the suitcases and even go to the restaurant and give information about the surroundings. I think that, and we're also working with a robot called James that can check in the guests, and he will drive up to you in the reception. But I think that our plans for maybe for 5 or 10 years, but I cannot see into the future. But if you look at the supermarkets and you see the self checks with, I think it's maybe 4 to 5 years that everything is going to be changed.
So you come to with your self-driving car, you drive, your car drives itself to the garage, and you're going up the elevator and you don't see any person, and you're just checking at the door of your room, and that's it. And then there is the room service, all online.
Online through the QR code. You just have QR code on your room. You just check it, and you gave in the stuff that you want, and the robot is driving up to your room. We already have robots driving in one of our hotels in Hotel Houten, and you can order your stuff, and the robot drives up to the table, and you can take your plate off. So it's going fast.
Yeah. So, sounds good. Well, I can see that we're almost nearing the end. So if there are any more questions, Michelle, that is not a new question. I can see you raising your hand, but I think that was the previous one. Is there anyone else who has a question? Or Michelle, do you have a new one? No, not. Well, I'm interested to see this work. I think it's a good improvement, and it's a nice collaboration between a bank and a relying party, as we would call Van der Valk. Let's see if this becomes a trend and other hospitality change will also accept this, or maybe in travel as well, where the identification is also maybe on a different level required. So I would like to thank you for your very interesting presentation. And I would thank all the people who attended for being here and raising questions. And as a final notification, I would like to say, if you like this presentation, we have another one in 2 weeks on the 2nd of December, same time, same place, new link. You can subscribe for that. And that will be about privacy, and the title will be Privacy Too Important to Restrict to a Legal Perspective Only. And there will be Professor Dr. Ed Pelen from University of Amsterdam, who will do a lecture on that, the lunch break. So the 2nd of December, mind LinkedIn or our website, and you'll probably also get the mailings for registration. And well, happy to welcome you back, and thanks all for being part of the lunch break. So bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.